Russia's defense ministry says rebel groups have been armed with chemical weapons in Syria and are planning to stage false flag attacks as a pretext for the US to carry out airstrikes.
Representatives of the Russian armed forces have said they have reason to believe that the United States at its Al-Tanf base in Syria has been preparing squads of rebels, fighters, to stage a chemical provocation, a chemical weapons attack in the south of Syria, in Daraa, which borders Jordan and Israel. They've been provided, allegedly, as many as 20 tons of chlorine, as well as detonators disguised as cigarette packs. And this attack is imminent. Defense officials have said that this attack will be blamed on the Syrian government and will be used as an excuse by the United States and its allies to strike at Bashar al-Assad, his government and his military directly.
Okay, cue musical intro. Boy, that's brilliant. I do think some things in the world are real. Like you guys. You guys are real. Most of you. Most of my listeners, I think, are not just in my head. I think I have the metrics to prove it. You've taken a leap of faith today. What is that sound? And I apologize if you take offense. I'm a little offended myself. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the future. What it is, joining you live from sunny California. It's a beautiful day today. I'm your host, Nathan Stoltman. I bring you the news, the real news. Even on Sundays, even when the world is on the brink of war, total destruction is what we might be facing. Maybe started from Donald Trump's Twitter account. Thanks for joining me today. I'm your host, Nathan Stoltman. Doshi is in the window. Do you want me to prove that he's here? The producer of the show? He doesn't care if I mention him, but I'm in a garage too. Oh, and I just screwed up my camera. That's Doshi. He's the producer of the show. He is calmly looking out the window at the moment. Let me get my camera set the way it should be. For those of you who are surprised to see me, I'm surprised to see you. My channel, the strike I had on my channel that I made a big deal out of and tried to get sympathy for, well, it cleared. Now everybody says, oh, you're a shill. Your channel was never shut down, etc., etc. Well, I got a strike for a video that asked rhetorically, can you criticize student activists? And talked about David Hogg, mentioned it by name. Anyway, got a strike, but justice, reality and justice prevailed. And here I am again on YouTube, on Lift the Veil Live. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. We are going to talk about this alleged false flag in Syria. And I can say that. I think Russia is effectively alleging that this is a false flag attack. I covered it a little bit yesterday, the early reports coming from Syria, allegedly, from noted propaganda outfits like the White Helmet. The reports are coming from rebels, anti-government activists are the ones reporting this. But first, the narrative starts in a particular way. Rebels claim Syrian gas attack. Syrian government denies claims. That'll be the headline at first. In fact, I'll start jumping to the headlines here. The more responsible headlines look like this one from the New York Times. Poison gas attack reported by Syrian anti-government activists. Poison gas attack reported by Syrian anti-government activists. Over time, those headlines morph into headlines like this. Syria chemical attack. Scores killed in Douma. Rescuers say. Government forces accused of dropping poisonous chemicals on last rebel stronghold in eastern Ghouta. I'm going to play you some video from this. the white helmets, should I give you Donald Trump's early reaction to this? I could have saved it for later. Donald Trump was looking forward to pulling out of Syria. We assume he's not brain dead and is aware of things called false flags and the deep state and so forth, but maybe we shouldn't assume so much. Not sure. Here's what he tweeted. Many dead, which is allegedly, by the way, including women and children, in mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to outside world. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price to pay. Open area immediately for medical help and verification. Another humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever. Sick. This is our president, Donald Trump. Today I'm wearing a shirt that says Russian bot. It's actually a shirt designed by my company, truthclothing.io. Anyone spreading the malicious fake news that the chemical weapons attack in Syria may have been a false flag is likely to have their message propagated by Russian bots. If there's a hashtag about it, Russian bots will be behind it. So today, I'm a Russian bot. You can get shirts like this one at truthclothing.io. Let me show you my website right here. People are loving these shirts, by the way, which is really great. Probably a few people in the chat have them. Mostly real. Truth Matters, Russian Bot are the featured t-shirts right now, but there's more stuff on the site. People are getting their Doshi stickers and what it is, window stickers, coffee mugs, all that stuff. It's a way you can support the show and support a small business at the same time. I actually tried to create something and offer it to people, and people do really like it. So check out truthclothing.io to support this kind of information. At first, I was concerned that you can't use, one of the things I did with the crackdown on YouTube is remove any video I'd ever made that said false flag or hoax, anywhere in the tags, anywhere in the description, or at least I removed those words. And today I asked my partner, I said, can I put false flag in the title? No, don't do that. We need your channel to stay up. And then I said, well, let's run a search for false flag Syria. One of the things that came up was that news report that I just played for you, which is from RT, which YouTube will remind you is funded in whole or in part by the Russian government. The title of that video is U.S. Training Syria Militants for False Flag Chemical Attack as Basis for Airstrikes. This is a video from 3 weeks ago. It's how I opened up this show, showing you a video where the Russians claim that the U.S. is preparing militants, anti-government militants, some people call them terrorists, rebels, to carry off a false flag chemical attack as a basis for launching airstrikes. The last chemical weapons attack in Khan Shaykhun, I don't know how to spell that for sure, Khan Shaykhun. Let's see if I just spell it totally messed up. There we go. The Khan Shaykhun attack was never had any evidence, and it was about a year ago. Somebody told me it was a year ago today. I'm just looking for some evidence about it. That was that Assad used sarin gas on his people. And in the end, there really wasn't any evidence that happened. And in fact, an MIT professor wrote an article claiming that it couldn't possibly have been sarin gas based on the way that the first responders approached the scene without any protection on, etc. This time, 3 weeks ago, the Russians claimed that there was going to be, they had intelligence that the United States was actively preparing by giving militants, rebels, chlorine gas, and the ability to employ it, that they were going to carry off a false flag chemical weapons attack in the outskirts of Damascus. They said in eastern Ghouta. This attack in Douma is basically in that eastern Ghouta area. It is the last rebel-held stronghold, they would call it. This is an article that tells the story that was told in the video I opened with. Russia warns it will retaliate if U.S. strikes in Syria over a false flag chemical attack. And reading from the article, Moscow will retaliate against any attack by the United States in Syria that threatens the lives of Russian servicemen. Russia's head of general staff has warned. Valery Gerasimov told state-run Sputnik News on Tuesday that the U.S. plans to strike government-held parts of Damascus in response to a false flag chemical attack. And there has been some talk about Navy ships, cruisers positioning themselves so that they, in what appeared to be a position to carry out an offensive action on Damascus. Russia claimed that there is evidence that they were going to use, that the U.S. and Western forces were going to use a chemical weapons attack, false flag chemical weapons attack, in order to justify strikes on Damascus. Russia says if that happens, there will be a strong response. Back to the article, quote, after the false flag attack, the U.S. plans to accuse the Syrian government troops of using chemical weapons and to provide the world community with the so-called evidence of the alleged mass death of civilians, unquote. The general said that the U.S., quote, plans to launch a missile strike on the government-held districts of Damascus in retaliation to a staged strike in the rebel-held enclave of eastern Ghouta. In a BBC article early about this, I'll just give you the response as far as Russia goes. The U.S. State Department source is quoted in this BBC report as saying, quote, the regime's history of using chemical weapons against its own people is not in dispute. Russia ultimately bears responsibility for the brutal targeting of countless Syrians with chemical weapons, unquote. Reminding you of Donald Trump's tweets, he also blames Iran and Russia. Right here, President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Let's go back in history a little bit to see where this all started. This is an article from April 4th, not too long ago. Today's April 8th. Article from April 4th. Think about the timing of this. Trump, this is a follow-up. I read the headline too quickly this morning. This is a follow-up to Trump's announcement during a speech, unexpectedly, that he planned to withdraw troops from Syria ASAP, basically. That the mission was effectively over, that we have defeated ISIS. That's what we wanted to do. We've wasted a lot of money in Syria, and he was ready to pull out troops. The deep state revolted against that. Everyone came out, all of his advisors, all of his generals said, no. We can't leave Syria. This article is a follow-up to that. Trump drops push for immediate withdrawal of troops from Syria. He was convinced that they still have to stay there to fight ISIS. We have a number of troops there, at least 2,000, and some put the numbers much higher. And the goal, which they may tell President Trump or not, the goal is to overthrow the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and most likely around getting a gas pipeline going through the country. Syria was one of the countries on the list for regime change, which is still what the deep state and the globalist empire is pushing for. Western powers, Saudi Arabia, Israel, US, UK, France, they're all on board with regime change. That's how it started, with Donald Trump saying he wanted to get out of Syria. About a week later, here we are with Donald Trump threatening attacks on Syria after the Russians previously warned that any offensive action on government-held areas that include Russian troops will be met with extreme violence. Here is a headline from Al Jazeera, which you would think would be fair and balanced on its Middle East coverage. In fact, they are another propaganda arm of the Western powers. They have particularly gripping coverage of this alleged chemical weapons attack, and they say that it's real, of course. They have moved on from saying allegedly or that rebel groups claim to making statements like this. A chemical attack in Douma, the last rebel-held stronghold near Syria's capital, Damascus, has killed at least 70 people, and affected hundreds. Rescue workers have told Al Jazeera. The White Helmets, a group of rescuers operating in opposition-held areas in Syria, said on Saturday that most of the fatalities were women and children. Quote, 70 people suffocated to death and hundreds are still suffocating, unquote. That's the head of the White Helmets told Al Jazeera, adding that the death toll was expected to rise as many people were in critical condition. The evidence for all of this, everything, and this is enough. The last time Donald Trump launched an attack in response to an alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria was apparently the result of him seeing video of apparently dead children being loaded into trucks after that chemical weapons attack in Khan Shaykhun. Let me just show you, the White Helmets have posted some graphic photos and video appearing to show children and women with foam coming out of their mouths, deceased. I wasn't able to show any of that on my show yesterday. I will be moving over to Twitch after this. Maybe we'll have a chance to review some of that more sensitive video over there. Let me show you what I can. This is from the Al Jazeera piece about the alleged chemical weapons attack.
A window into what life is like in the rebel-held enclave of Douma. Children, mothers, fathers struggle for oxygen after a suspected chemical attack. Reporters cannot get into the town, civilians cannot get out. The internet videos are the only evidence of their suffering.
Okay, right? They said it right there. Internet videos are the only evidence of their suffering. That's important because with only that evidence,
reporters cannot get into the town, civilians cannot get out. The internet videos are the only evidence of their suffering.
Internet videos will be enough for us to go ahead and justify offensive action. The deep state attempted this before with Obama's red line. Obama at one point famously said that the red line for him in Syria for imposing a no-fly zone was if they used chemical weapons. So the powers that be organized a false flag chemical weapons attack at that time, and Obama was keen enough not to take the bait on it and go ahead and impose a no-fly zone and create another Libya at the time. Donald Trump criticizes that too, actually. I'll go ahead and pull that up. If President Obama had crossed his stated red line in the sand, the Syrian disaster would have ended long ago. Animal Assad would have been history. Calling him an animal. People are giving him a hard time based on tweets he's given before. Pretty funny tweets that they have copies of. This is something apparently he said before. The only reason President Obama wants to attack Syria is to save face over his very dumb red line statement. Do not attack Syria, fix USA. Apparently he tweeted in 2013. Again, to our very foolish leader, do not attack Syria. If you do, many bad things will happen. And from that fight, the U.S. gets nothing. 2013. That was when the the powers that be, I would say, the deep state, previously acted. And after that, government, international body oversaw the destruction of all of President Assad's Syrian government's supply of chemical weapons in an American ship parked offshore that was specially designed for the purpose. And it was certified that the Syrians had gotten rid of all of their chemical weapons supply. This time, you know what the news story is? The news story is that they probably got it from North Korea. Kim Jong-un. So see how you like that excuse or explanation. North Korea provided the chemical weapons, we'll say. Russia has responded by convening a UN Security Council meeting to discuss threats to international peace. This is reported on Sputnik, which is government-owned state media for Russia. Russia convenes on Monday a meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss threats to international peace and security. Russia's permanent mission to the United Nations said Sunday. Thus, the UN Security Council will hold 2 meetings on Monday. The meeting initiated by Russia will take place approximately at 3 p.m. local time. Upon its completion, the Security Council will proceed to discuss the situation in Syria. Early in the day, 9 out of 15 members of the UN Security Council have urged the convocation of an emergency meeting to discuss reports about alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria. Syrian government refutes the reports. They say they're nonsense. Also earlier in the day, the Russian Defense Ministry's Center for Syrian Reconciliation refuted reports about the use of a chlorine bomb in Syria's Duma, adding that Russia was ready to send its specialists to collect data that would confirm the fabricated nature of the statements. Russian Foreign Ministry said that the information attacks about alleged use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government forces were aimed at covering up terrorists and justifying possible external military action. The ministry warned against any military action based on far-fetched and fabricated reports, adding that it might have severe consequences. Russia is warning of severe consequences should the U.S. unilaterally or with support from other nations decide to initiate airstrikes or missile strikes of some sort in response to what Russia claims is a fabricated event. And once again, the evidence we have for this event comes from internet video. Perhaps I'll get a chance to review some more of that internet video as we move over to Twitch. Let me just on other Russian news. So this is the motive here. The motive is we need to overthrow the government. We've been trying to do it for a long time. That was the whole reason for us being in Syria, funding rebel groups, arming rebel groups, training rebel groups, a lot of whom are affiliated with terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, or they go by a number of other names. The White Helmets have been found affiliated with terrorist groups as well. We need a reason, though, because right now we are about to withdraw. Donald Trump said he's ready to go, which basically means handing over control to Russia and Iran. But they won. This is the thing about the chemical weapons attack. You have to think, who benefits, right? Cui bono? The Russian-backed Syrian army has won the war. This is the last stronghold, just a small enclave in the outskirts of Damascus. This is all that's left. They're in the middle of a campaign against them, making progress, and in the middle of negotiating a deal for the terrorists or the rebels to be evacuated. They're in the middle of negotiating an evacuation deal after their punishing assault on Duma, this rebel-held enclave. The war is basically over, and the only thing that would bring in outside forces would be a chemical weapons attack. which there's no strategic reason for the Syrian army to perform. There's no strategic reason for a chemical weapons attack. They're winning the war with conventional weapons, and when they go into an area, they're there. They immediately protect the people that were not part of these terrorist rebel groups. They're trying to win over the hearts and minds of Syrians. Most Syrians welcome the government and would say it's a liberation when the government takes back an area from these terrorist groups. Okay, so that's not conspiracy theory. It's been reported from people who are on the ground. And the media will treat it as if it is. So I'm on this channel live. It's real important that I stay here live. And like I said, I didn't know for sure if I could use false flag in the title, but it's a real thing. It happens, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, like other alleged chemical attacks in Syria, in fact. And I'm simply saying, based on the evidence, that it seems to appear that that might be what's going on, and that's certainly what Russia claims is going on. So we're just looking at the news and what's being reported and the reliability of the various sources, including the white helmets. In other Russia news, the spy poisoning narrative, it seems to actually be crumbling, maybe even to your regular, uninformed listener, viewer of mainstream news. The reason for that is a report that came out from Porton Down, the facility which actually has chemical weapons, analyzes chemical weapons, and happened to be about 6 or 8 miles from the spot where the Russian spy and his daughter were found, Skripal. They say, and this is why the narrative seems to be crumbling, is that Porton Down experts are unable to identify precise source of Novichok, that poison spy. The lab's boss says a state actor made the Novichok and also rubbishes claims that it could have come from his facility. The Russians have claimed that it could very well be a MI6 UK-based plot in order to turn up tensions with Russia, take the lead against Russia, and in the meantime, without evidence, just to prove that we don't need any more evidence to attack Syria at this point. We've already shown that. We don't wait for the evidence before we react, because the reaction was planned from the beginning. The problem was created for the reaction, which creates the solution. Now they're talking about relocating these Skripals. Now that they're feeling better, they're talking about putting them into witness protection in the United States, which would mean the press will never have access to them, conveniently, right? Never get to ask them questions, never get to see that they actually existed. One of their relatives is being denied a visa to come visit them from Russia. Meanwhile, they are Russian citizens. The UK claims if they do the witness protection program in the United States, that it's for their safety, to protect them from death by Russia. We appear to be on the verge of the war to end all wars. It appears that way. We try not to be fear-mongering, doomsday. We're not saying you need to start prepping. But this is a precarious situation. More than at any other time, we have been warned that if we follow up with strikes after one of these alleged chemical weapons attacks, which some have shown in the past have been staged or false flag attacks, that if we react before they do an investigation, before they find out what the real cause is, that Russia this time will be forced to respond because they have troops in harm's way. And they plan to respond by taking out not only whatever incoming missiles or aircraft are coming, but also the sources of those, the carriers that those weapons and aircraft are coming off of. If we get into that war, then that could easily escalate into a war with Israel joining us, Saudi Arabia being our ally, Iran joining forces with Russia, which they already are partners, and China certainly could have something to say about it as well. It would destabilize the world. Now, I put in the title, Stock Market Crash. A lot of people have been talking about Black Monday. Black Monday being the event in 1987 when the stock market declined 22%. A lot of people have drawn parallels to that, the build-up to that event, the build-up to the 1929 crash, and other major stock market events in history. I might be wrong. Right now, future markets just opened. Things are actually up. It's actually unbelievable what happens in the stock market to me. You have crazy bad news where you think the whole world is falling apart and the stock market goes up. And maybe that's what's going to happen tomorrow. But one of these days, and one of these days soon, shit's going to hit the fan. And all signs are that the market's going down. And this time, once that happens, everything starts to blow up. The whole world changes. So we're on the verge of, both with this war brewing, if we decide to be stupid enough to, without evidence, launch counterattacks into at Damascus or into Syria. If we're stupid enough to do that, we're right on the brink of all-out war, and we're right on the brink of the financial reset, which is when stock markets crash, bond markets crash, interest rates go up. And then once stuff starts to hit the fan, the Fed comes in and just starts giving away money for free to try to stop the bleeding. That will make things worse because we'll have massive, massive inflation. If you have dollars right now and that you want to keep the value in those dollars, if you want to do something about it that's not as risky as cryptocurrencies, then I would advise, because from some of the word I'm hearing, it could be that gold and silver are about to rocket. So, and regardless of whether they do that, with inflation, which it is impossible to escape at this point, with inflation, the price of gold and silver go up. So if you have disposable income, if you're invested in stocks, you might want to think about reevaluating your portfolio. You could put your money in some gold stocks, for example. From what I understand, some of those are a good investment. So I normally don't talk about the economy too much because it might bore people, but it is important because things are about to change in a major way. Once that final that meltdown occurs in the stock market first, then everything else is going to quickly cascade after that. And eventually the Fed will step in and try to rescue things, but that's not going to solve the problem. This time we're broke. Donald Trump has made no efforts, and the Republican Congress and Senate have made zero effort to fix that situation and address any of our spending concerns. In fact, the tax cut adds another $1.5 trillion to the deficit. We're running $1 trillion deficits now as far as our spending. We just passed the biggest military budget ever with the latest spending bill, along with a ton of other spending priorities. They just stopped caring. I think what happened is senators, congressmen, the government says, hey, F it. We're never coming out of this anyway. Might as well just spend money like it's going out of style, because in the end, we're never going to pay it back. And that's where we're at. We're never, ever going to pay back the debt. So yeah, in the end, in order to start, we're going to have to start over. We're going to experience a point of time which by all rights should be worse than anything anybody has ever experienced in their lifetime. And most people say worse than the Great Depression. Now, there could be some things that happen that we end up way better on the other side, and maybe it isn't too prolonged, but you have to be prepared for it. And one of the ways to be prepared for it is just to have money, a hedge against massive inflation, the dollar going way, way down, stocks going down, bonds going down. It's good to have something that should go up in that environment. So having some silver and or gold, cryptocurrency, if you're looking for something a little riskier, which could have even more massive returns, or like I said, gold stocks and stuff. So if you guys are into investment advice. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go over to Twitch, which is twitch.tv/lifttheveil411. Twitch.tv/lifttheveil411. I'm live on Twitch right now. There are plenty of people there. By the way, if you've ever wondered if there wouldn't be enough people in the chat or what have you, I have 84 people tuned in. We'll probably get hopefully up to 200 or so with people switching over from YouTube. What I can do is take phone calls. I can maybe review some of the video I couldn't review here on YouTube. And I plan to go over the Jason Goodman interview to try to cut out the good parts, and maybe we'll make some commentary on it while we do it. Inevitably, we'll make some commentary. So the thing about Twitch, if you're on your phone, just download the app. Download the app, find my channel. You search Lift the Veil or Lift the Veil 411. Follow me, hit your notifications, and you should get notifications every time I go live. Generally, it's much more reliable than YouTube, and for some people it's 100%. Okay, so I'm just going to, there won't even be an interruption for those folks that are tuned in there right now. Those longer shows, or those shows I choose to do outside of YouTube, are always stored immediately after the episode is over. They're not as obvious. We'll just go to my channel, hit videos, and then look for the video of the show that you didn't catch. Okay, and sometimes, they're nice long shows if you never get enough Lift the Veil. Remember, I'm on Steemit. Remember, I'm on BitChute. Remember, I have a podcast, which is great for some of the longer stuff. That's just anywhere podcasts are. Just search Lift the Veil. Remember my t-shirts, which are at truthclothing.io. And I will see you in 2 seconds on Twitch. From me, from Doshi, who showed up for the show just for you. Doshi, you want to say hi? No, he doesn't. He's sleeping. From me, Doshi, and the rest of the team, that is what it is.